What if I told you that every single dollar in your wallet is not just money, but a dose of an addictive drug in one of the most powerful systems of control ever engineered? A system so carefully designed, so perfectly maintained, that governments and banks depend on keeping you hooked, because your addiction fuels the entire global economy. It sounds like a conspiracy theory. It sounds almost unbelievable. But today, we're going to unmask the 10 levels of financial addictions that governments desperately don't want you to see. From the credit cards in your back pocket to the dollar dependency gripping entire nations, this is the story of how money became the world's most dangerous drug. And by the end of this journey, you'll never look at your bank account, your debt, or even the piece of paper called money the same way again. Let's begin. Level 1. Credit cards, the gateway drug. Every addict has a first taste. And in the world of financial addiction, it almost always begins with credit cards. Think about the design. The plastic rectangle slides effortlessly. No exchange of bills, no heavy coins. Just a quick swipe, a tap, or even a wave of your phone. And what happens? Your brain releases a tiny hit of dopamine, the exact same neurotransmitter triggered by gambling, by lottery tickets, by slot machines flashing in a casino. That's not an accident. That's engineering. Here's what the banks don't want you to think about. When you carry a $10,000 balance and only make the minimum payments, you'll be chained to that debt for 30 years. And by the end, you'll have paid back over $20,000 in interest alone. That's not financial convenience. That's a lifetime subscription plan to debt. The numbers are staggering. The average American carries over $8,000 in credit card debt. Canadians owe nearly $4,000 per person. In countries like South Korea, revolving debt has surged so rapidly that regulators openly admit they're worried about a national debt addiction crisis. And yet, these cards are marketed with smiling faces, cashback offers, airline miles, and exclusive perks, the same way a dealer hands out free samples. Because once you're in, you're in. Level 2. Payday loans. If credit cards are the entry point, payday loans are where the system bears its fangs. Imagine this. You're short $200 before your next paycheck. A neon sign promises fast cash, no credit check. You walk in, sign a quick paper, and walk out with money in hand. Relief floods in. Crisis averted. But here's the reality. That $200 loan comes with an annualized interest rate of up to 400%. That's not a typo. 400%. In the United States, over 12 million people fall into this trap every year, paying more than $7 billion in fees. Studies reveal that the average payday borrower is trapped for 5 months out of every year, rolling over the loan, paying fees, but never touching the principal. And this isn't just an American problem. In Canada, where regulators tried to crack down, payday lenders simply rebranded and came back with new loopholes. In the UK, payday loans skyrocketed in the 2010s before regulators were forced to cap interest rates. Level 3. Student debt, the addiction of a generation. Now let's move to something that looks less predatory, until you look closer. Student debt. Governments and universities sell it as an investment in your future. Parents encourage it. Banks promote it. But behind the smiling brochures is a system that has chained an entire generation of young adults into lifelong repayment schedules. The United States leads the charge, with over $1.7 trillion in outstanding student loans. That's more than the GDP of Canada or South Korea. But it doesn't stop there. In the United Kingdom, student debt has tripled in just 10 years. In Australia, the HECS system locks young workers into obligations that last decades. Even in countries like India, private banks push student loans with punishing terms, banking on the desperation of families who see education as the only escape from poverty. The cruel irony? Many graduates discover their degrees don't guarantee jobs, and when they do find work, the monthly debt repayment slices away at their most productive years. Level 4. Mortgage dependence. If credit cards are the gateway and student debt is the leash, mortgages are the golden cage. We're told a mortgage is the path to stability, to family, to the dream of ownership. But here's the truth. The 30-year mortgage was never designed for your convenience. It was designed to extract the maximum possible wealth from your lifetime. Take a $300,000 home. Over 30 years with interest, you'll pay over $500,000. That's 2 houses for the price of 1. And you never really own the house until the very last payment. Miss a few payments along the way? The bank takes everything, including decades of your equity. Some countries push this even further. In Norway and Denmark, mortgage terms stretch to 40 and even 50 years. Imagine passing on debt to the next generation like an heirloom. In Japan, banks created multi-generational mortgages, where your children literally inherit your housing debt. The addiction isn't just personal. Entire economies become hooked on rising property values. Governments boast about a strong housing market as if it's a sign of prosperity. Level 5. Stock market speculation. Now the addiction shifts from slow, grinding payments to something more thrilling and far more dangerous. Welcome to stock market speculation. We've all seen the rise of day trading apps. Sleek, colorful, gamified. They make buying stocks feel like playing Candy Crush, with confetti animations when you win and silence when you lose. That silence is deliberate. Losses are muted, wins are celebrated, just like in a casino. The statistics are chilling. Over 80% of day traders lose money, and yet they keep trading, convinced the next hit will be the one that pays off. In South Korea, entire communities became hooked on stock trading during the pandemic, with many borrowing money to buy stocks they didn't understand. In the US, meme stocks like GameStop and AMC created a frenzy where people believed they could outsmart the system, only to lose everything. Level 6. Real estate flipping. Finally, in the first half of this journey, we reach real estate flipping. What began as a legitimate investment strategy turned into a speculative addiction that has devastated housing markets worldwide. Television glamorized it, YouTube tutorials made it seem easy, and soon, armies of amateur speculators were buying properties, not to live in, but to flip for profit. The result? In Australia and Canada, home prices have become so inflated that entire generations are locked out of ownership. In the US, corporate investors bought up neighborhoods during the housing crash, renting them back to the very people who could no longer afford to buy. In China, speculative real estate created entire ghost cities, billions of dollars in empty towers while millions can't afford homes. The addiction cycle is intoxicating. Buy, flip, leverage, repeat, until the bubble bursts. And when it does, communities suffer, families collapse, and regular people are left homeless. Level 7. Government deficit spending. At this level, governments behave like addicts chasing an immediate high, spending to win votes, stimulate growth, or fund grand projects, and then kicking the bill to future generations. The math is brutal. Decades of deficits create trillions in obligations that compound like interest on interest. Short-term gains mask long-term collapse. Wages stagnate, infrastructure decays, and social services become hostage to debt service. Politicians prefer to spend now and blame later, because spending wins elections while austerity destroys careers. That political incentive makes deficit addiction almost impossible to break. The result? Nations borrow more, creditors tighten the leash, and sovereignty slowly erodes. Level 8. Central bank quantitative easing. When debts spiral, central banks step in with quantitative easing, QE, creating money to buy government bonds and stabilize markets. QE looks like salvation. Markets calm, banks recover, asset prices soar. But QE is the institutional dealer that enables government addiction. It creates a permanent buyer of last resort, inflating stocks and property while eroding cash value. The wealth created from printed money concentrates in assets the rich already own, widening inequality. And the longer QE runs, the harder it is to stop. Level 9. Sovereign debt addiction. At level 9, entire countries lose autonomy because they are permanently dependent on foreign credit. Borrowing funds development, but when debt servicing swallows budgets, lenders demand diktats, spending cuts, asset sales, policy shifts. We've seen this play out, defaults and crises in nations where debt exceeded capacity. Sovereign debt addiction turns nations into customers of global creditors, and customers rarely get to set the rules. Level 10. Global dollar dependency. This is the apex, the global dollar trap. For decades, the US dollar has been the world's reserve currency, the default for trade, commodities, and foreign reserves. That gave the US an exorbitant privilege to borrow cheaply and influence global finance. But it also created a planetary addiction. When the Fed prints, global liquidity shifts. When the Fed hikes, emerging markets convulse. And if the reserve system frays, whether through competing currencies, digital alternatives, or geopolitical decoupling, the ripples would reshape alliances, trade, and everyday prices worldwide. Financial addiction is not a moral failing. It's a structural design. Once you connect the dots, from the plastic in your wallet to the dollar shaping global politics, you gain leverage. You can choose to step off the treadmill, educate others, and back reforms that break the cycle. Breakdowns like this, subscribe to EconFix Explained, hit the bell, and share this video with someone who still thinks debt is just a part of life. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and most importantly, Stay free.